Well, hello and welcome to the Movie Paradise. I'm your host, Nathanael Molnár, and this is Movie Night Tonight. Every single week here we watch a new film and discuss it in depth, with each month having a new theme. We are currently in the month of January, which is our month of boxing movies, and the movie we are discussing tonight is 1976's Rocky. Once again, I'm your host, Nathanael Molnár. I'm joined by Rob Giachinta. Rob, thanks for being here.
What's going on? We're back.
We are back. We took
Season 3.
Season 3
continues.
Episode 3. So just to clear things up before we get into our discussion, we are officially bringing back Movie Night Tonight, which was always one of my favorite shows to do on the Movie Paradise. We started out Season 3. We broke up. We're like, Season 3, it's happening. We did 2 episodes. We were doing gangster films. We did The Godfather and what was the other one we did? Scarface.
Those movies were so long, we stopped.
Yeah.
We're still watching them, actually.
We're still trying to finish Scarface. Well, no, we were supposed to do Goodfellas next.
Yeah.
Which we're still watching.
And that one's only like 2 hours.
Yeah. But, so we did 2 episodes of Season 3, and then life kind of got in the way. And we never got around to doing any more.
Got married, had kids.
Yep, so the old song and dance.
Now she left him, so he's back.
With my woman gone, it's time. No. So we're bringing back Movie Night Tonight. So this is Season 3, Episode 3. We're bringing it back, and we're kicking off 2020 with Movie Night Tonight. So we're doing January is going to be our month of boxing movies. And at the end of this episode, I will reveal what our next film is that we will be discussing. But the movie we're talking about tonight, as I mentioned before, is the one and the only, the original Rocky from 1976, directed by John G. Avildsen. I apologize, John. I don't know how to pronounce your name. Avildsen. I'll say Avildsen.
Where is it on the paper?
It's right here.
Top.
Avildsen.
Yeah, right.
That sounds about right. It's Avildsen. Avildsen. We'll say that for now. Yeah. Directed by John G. Avildsen, written by Sylvester Stallone. So we both had a chance to... We've seen this film a couple of times before. So I want to kick off this discussion, and it is a spoiler discussion. We are talking about Rocky as if you watched it with us. So if you have not seen the film and you don't know anything about it, you might want to not listen to this because we're going to be talking all things Rocky. So... before we get into our discussion, I just want us to both take a chance to say what our first impression of the film is, and roughly, if we can say, how many times we've seen it. And Rob, you can kick us off.
I think I've seen Rocky at least 3 times by now. I've seen a lot of... I've watched a lot of the Rocky franchise now as I've grown up. I'm a big fan of the new Creed movies, especially. I still think Creed is my favorite Rocky franchise movie, but I mean that's up for debate.
And the gasp in the audience.
The original Rocky is definitely my second favorite, and it's the ultimate underdog story. You know, the guy who wasn't supposed to have a chance in the ring, who managed to put up a fight against the great Apollo Creed, and it's a very, very easy watch. It still holds up to this day, and I think it's a movie, even if you're not into sports or anything like that, it's a good drama, and it's a good feel-good story, and I think it's a reason why it stood the test of time, and new people seem to enjoy it every time it comes out, and there's a reason why they still make movies in this franchise, I think.
Yeah. Did you say how many times roughly you've seen it?
Yeah, about 3.
3?
So,
all right.
Yeah.
So going off of your point of it's a movie that even people who aren't fans of sports can enjoy, I am Exhibit A.
Come on, you love sports.
Oh yeah, I love that sports ball. But yeah, so I love this movie. I've seen Rocky probably 3, 4, maybe 5 times, right around there. I've definitely seen it a few times. I think this movie is great. As you said, it is the classic underdog story. When the odds are against somebody and they have to rise against them. I think it does that so well. It's very well written. It's a slower film. Like it's one of those. I can imagine if it's one of those movies, like a lot of these sort of classic films where you hear a lot about them growing up, and as a film fan, as you're kind of branching out and discovering new movies, it's one you hear a lot about. And then you go back and you actually watch it. I know the first time I saw Rocky, I was a little bit I don't want to say put off because that sort of has a negative connotation, but I was a little taken aback by how kind of slow of a movie it is. A drama as opposed to like an action or a thriller.
I mean, think about it. There's only like 2 boxing scenes, the one in the beginning, one in the end. Really.
Exactly. It's really a character piece.
Yeah.
And I think that's what makes Rocky stand out. I think that's what makes it endure as a film. And it's a reason why...
Especially over the sequels, too.
Exactly. It's a reason why it won Best Picture. Of course, not the only reason. It was a contributing factor that it helped make this movie be what it is. I think because it's a slower piece, it's a character piece, it's really about a person. It's about Rocky Balboa, a guy who is sort of the on-screen, the epitome of what a male stereotype is supposed to be. He's supposed to be this gruff, expressionless, emotionless person who... and as the film goes on, you see he kind of struggles with this persona and this person who he is expected and supposed to be. And I think looking at Rocky as a movie and a story about a man who has a trouble expressing himself, trying to find the ways to express himself, but with the backdrop of being about boxing and this big boxing match coming up, I think it's a really profound movie, and I really enjoy Rocky a lot. I always find, looking back at a lot of these classic movies that have really like permeated our mainstream consciousness, the movies that have endured, I'm always fascinated by just the struggles that they endured to even get made. How little people thought of them from the developmental stages and from conception. When Stallone stole the script, he had about $100 in the bank. He had no car. And he was trying to sell his dog for $50 just to get some money. His dog. That was the only like valuable thing that he had. And he was trying to sell for $50 so that he could live. And he was offered by the producers of the film. He was offered $350,000 to sell the script. But the thing was he refused to sell it unless if he was cast in the leading role. So think of it in this terms. You've got about $100 in your bank account. That's it. You're trying to sell your dog for $50. You got no car. Someone offers you for a script that you wrote, and you're no name, no nothing.
Yeah.
Someone offers you $350,000, and you say, no, only if you cast me in the leading role. And the producers, the studio at the time, they're thinking, who's this Sylvester Stallone kid? They're like, we want we want James Caan in the role. We want someone of like an actual stature in the role. We don't want this Sylvester Stallone kid.
And it shows how good the script was, because I think they were like, well, we can't pass up this script, and who knows, it could work. And I think he definitely proved his acting chops. He was nominated for an Academy Award.
Exactly. Well, which is crazy to look at and think about. But so they originally, back when the studio wanted the script, they were going to pay Stallone $350,000 for the script. The studio wanted to get the script. And they were going to put another actor in the role. They were going to give the film a $2 million budget. As soon as they learned that they couldn't get the script without getting Stallone in the leading role, they cut the budget to $1 million. Cut it in half. And then the final budget ended up being about $1.1 million. And the two producers of the film, producers Irwin Winkler and Robert Chardoff, they had to mortgage their own homes to raise the final $100,000 to finish the movie. Jesus. Now, what's crazy is that, in retrospect, the film went on, it was the highest, I didn't realize this until I was looking into the movie, Rocky was the highest grossing movie of the year that it came out.
I would bet. Yeah, that makes sense.
It was the highest grossing movie of that year.
It came out in 76?
Yeah, 76.
What year was Jaws?
75.
Oh, okay. That was
that was the year before. But Rocky was the highest grossing movie of that year, goes on to get all these Oscar nominations, wins Best Picture, wins Best Director, wins Best Editing. It's crazy.
Nominated for lead actor, 2 supporting actors,
Lead
supporting
actress.
actress,
Lead actress.
or lead, whatever.
Best screenplay, best original song, best sound. It's nominated.
Should have won. Did it not win Best Original Song?
No, it didn't.
That's a crock of shit. What the hell beat it?
I don't know.
That's like an iconic
I don't have that in
song.
front of me at the moment.
I'm assuming it was nominated for Best Score, too.
No, not best score. Just best song and best sound.
That is like one of the most iconic scores of all time. Or themes.
Yeah.
Like,
Do-do-do,
like what? I'd be very interested to see what won
Yeah.
or was even nominated over that.
Yeah, well,
Probably something you've never even heard of.
probably. But no, it's just it's crazy to me. Like we've talked about on the show in previous seasons before, like when we talked about Halloween and we talked about a lot of these other films that are true independent indie films with shoestring budgets, and everything goes wrong. And the original Star Wars is like this too, and everything goes wrong, everything's
Jaws,
falling
too.
apart, and then it just by some miracle it all fits together and becomes the perfect storm and becomes iconic classic films that we know today. And Rocky, without a doubt, fits into that.
And I think it really just kind of lends to, you know, when you're held to such a tight budget, you have to get creative and really work your hardest. And I think it shows in the long run, and that's why they end up getting rewarded. Films like Jaws, Star Wars, Rocky.
Now, with every single Star Wars, Jaws, and Rocky, there's about 1 billion films where everything goes wrong and then they don't work, and it's terrible. Yes, that is a prime example. But I completely agree, and I've echoed these sentiments on the show many times before. I really do believe that when filmmakers are put in the corner where they're not able to rely on big visual effects, they're not able to rely on being able to go and do reshoots, they're not able to rely on having endless amounts of money to be able to fix problems, they have to rely on what makes them great writers, great directors, great filmmakers. They have to go to their roots of their profession and their craft and their skill. And that's when you can see who are the talented filmmakers.
Yeah. Look at a guy like M. Night Shyamalan. When he first started out, when he had these smaller movies, they were great. And then they give him like an Avatar and like Lady in the Water, and like they just are bloated messes. And then he returns to stuff like The Visit and Split, and those get him back on track. I think that it happens for a lot of filmmakers, I think. Yeah.
I think when a lot of the extra frivolous stuff is stripped away, that's when you see what a filmmaker is made of.
I think another guy who could, that would be good for him is a Neil Blomkamp, who I think I would really like to see him return with a kind of a smaller, more of a District 9 kind of budget, not a Elysium or a Chappie
Definitely.
budget.
So we talked about Rocky being an underdog story, a classic underdog story. Which I definitely believe that's at the roots of the film. But what I really like about the movie is it kind of has a blend of falling into conventional story tropes and then also simultaneously defying them. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, when you look at the plot of Rocky, it's pretty straightforward. It's pretty much what you would expect.
Yeah.
It's the classic underdog story, as we were saying. But at the same time, he loses the fight at the end.
Yeah.
The classic trope would be, the conventional thing would be, that Rocky as the underdog takes the win at the end, has the final shot, and wins.
I think they realized that, it would have just almost been not, like, realistic in a way. That a guy with such little training was able to defeat a guy like this. But it shows that if you work hard enough, you might, he was able to hold up a fight with this guy, and then eventually in the sequel beat him.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the big themes of this movie that I think is really cool. Is it's not about winning. Mm-hmm. It's not about that Rocky needed to win the fight. It's the fact that he went the longest in the ring against Apollo Creed than anyone else had gone before. They were saying in the movie, I forget exactly, but they're like, it's a record that he's survived round after round. And it's not about winning.
That was based right up with the true story about Muhammad Ali and that, what was it, Chuck Webner.
Yeah.
That's a really good movie, I think.
Yeah.
I wish people had saw.
The movie Chuck, which is a biopic about the guy that inspired Sylvester Stallone to write the script for Rocky.
Yeah.
Which, very good movie starring Liev Schreiber. Check it out if you can. It came out a few years ago. But yeah, I think that's what makes this movie so good to me, is it had very easy avenues for it to just fall into the same tropes. And while, like I said, while it does have that classic underdog story, it does defy convention, and I think that's something that it does very well. And another thing that I think, going off of that, is I think it would have been very easy for Apollo Creed, who is played brilliantly by Carl Weathers in this film.
Carl Weathers.
I love him too.
He's great on The Mandalorian.
Agreed. It would have been very easy for Apollo Creed to just be kind of a classic villain in this movie.
Yeah.
He would for him to just sort of be a straightforward bad guy. But he's not played that way at all. No. He's very relatable, and he's a guy, when you're watching this movie, I don't think you're rooting for him, but you're behind him. You don't hate him. The movie doesn't make you hate him.
He has a lot of charisma.
Exactly.
So that's what makes you, almost like him in a way.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that is due to Carl Weathers.
Yeah. And throughout the film series, I think you get an even deeper appreciation for him.
Yeah, and I think that was a great way to take the movie. Just having it, because you see throughout the film, for Apollo Creed, this is really, he's not evil. He's not a bad guy really at all. It's more the reason why Rocky sort of catches him by surprise is that Apollo Creed sort of just falls into the mindset of, oh, I'm the best. And so no one's going to beat me. And this kid, like, the whole reason they have the fight is he's like, oh, the names sound good. Italian Stallion versus Apollo Creed.
And he wants to give somebody, like, he's trying to create a show. Like, let's pick someone that, just kind of like a rags to riches story almost. Mm-hmm. He's an entertainer at heart, I feel like. Yeah. He's a good show promoter as well.
Yeah, and I think that's where it kind of becomes Apollo Creed's undoing, is he's trying to put on a good show, and Rocky's there to win. Mm-hmm. And then it's even heightened by the fact that Rocky doesn't win.
Yeah.
And so, ultimately, Apollo Creed does get his show that he's looking for.
But everybody's cheering for Rocky by the end of it, even though he doesn't win.
Yeah. So, we could talk all day about the ending fight, which I think is one of the main reasons why it's as big of a boxing movie as it is. But at its core, the movie is a drama about Rocky and this girl that he likes, Adrian, and their relationship, and his relationship with Paulie, and his relationship with Mickey. And it's all these relationships going on, this relationship drama going on throughout with the backdrop of this impending boxing match.
I could listen to Mickey and Rocky talk all day. I just love their conversation. It's just, Burgess Meredith?
Yeah.
Just the way he talks is just all that. Just he's kind of like a older version of like a Nick Nolte almost.
Yeah. Oh,
you're a great bum, Rock.
Yeah. He's great. I love that dynamic.
Did you know he was on those original I think he played the Penguin in the original Adam West Batman.
I didn't realize that was the same guy. Yeah. Oh, that's cool. Yeah, no, he's great in this movie. All the performances are great in this movie.
I really wish they kept Paulie around for at least like the first Creed. I would have liked to see if he was still what he was still doing.
Yeah. So one of the things that this movie is sort of known for is steady cameras are very commonplace now. Completely commonplace in the film industry now. But the Rocky was really the first time that the Steadicam was used. The Steadicam was invented by this guy named Garrett Brown, and originally he created the Steadicam. And for those of you who don't know what a Steadicam is, it's pretty much a stabilization unit for a camera, so that if you're going handheld with a camera, so your options aren't just free handheld cameras, which can lead to a lot of shakiness on camera, or a grounded tripod, or a dolly of some sort. The Steadicam allows you to be able to move the cameras around without having that shakiness of just doing free handheld. But the guy who created the Steadicam, Garrett Brown, he created it, and he was looking for a way to be able to sell this and to be able to show people. He wanted to create some footage to show to people that would make them go, how the hell did you do that? And to us now, it's so commonplace and it's so easy to look at. But exactly, expected. But at the time, he and his wife, or I believe it was his girlfriend at the time, they went out to those steps, the museum steps that is from Rocky so famously in the movie, it's so iconic. She was going up and down the stairs, and he was following her with the Steadicam. And then the director of Rocky, he saw that footage. He somehow came across that footage, and he's like, "We need to use that." And so then that's how the famous museum stairs scene was created. Through that footage, they got the Steadicam, and they were able to do that shot. And I mean, part of the iconic nature of the scene is what it means for the characters and its place in the movie. But a lot of it is just the fluid nature of being able to shoot him going up and down the stairs. Like, it's really incredible.
Yeah, that's a really good... There's a lot of just great scenes and great camera work in this movie. I mean, it's... Like you were saying, like, for such, like, a low budget and just, like, unsureness of what this was going to turn out, like, they had to be really proud of themselves of how this turned out.
Exactly. It was.
I'm glad they were rewarded with recognition, too.
I absolutely agree. It was all about innovation.
Yep.
It's about... And going back to what we were saying about independent filmmaking and not having a lot of budget. When you're faced with obstacles and challenges, it's all about how do you circumvent it? What do you do to get around the issue in the most creative way possible? And I mean, a lot of these things, like with the use of the Steadicam, like that's so evident of it. And you're mentioning other great camera work in the film. A lot of the shots of Rocky running through the streets, that was all done guerrilla style, where they're just have the camera in the back of a car. They're following Stallone, who's running. They didn't get a permit to be able to do that. They didn't plan. All the people in the backgrounds were just real people who were just seeing a camera and Sylvester Stallone, who they didn't know.
Like, even the people that, like, he taught, like, when he, like, walks by those people singing by the trash cans or whatever?
No, I think some of those were planned extras.
Like, I like that like girl that's like, "Hey, Rock, you're a creep."
Yeah, no. I think those were planted people, but a lot of the training shots where he's like up in the morning and he's running, it was all just, we don't need to get a permit. Yeah, because
back then I feel like it's probably not as big of a deal as it would be today.
Yeah, but going back to this of the challenges of low budget filmmaking, one of the key scenes that I think really helped with this was the ice rink scene. Because originally, Stallone had written it and they had prepared it where it was going to be, the rink was filled. They were going to have 300 extras be there.
Wow.
Stallone shows up to film. To his horror, they could only afford one extra, which was the guy. And so they on the spot rewrite the scene to make it just the two of them and it's closed and all that. But
I think it makes for a better scene.
Exactly. It makes for a better scene because now it's so much more personal.
Yeah.
And you didn't need 300 extras to get the point across. It gets the point across even more that's just the two of them. It just hammers that point home. It's funny to me how much like little things like that, because I've had some experience filmmaking, and when you're on set and you're working through issues and a problem arises, like I can just imagine.
I remember the problems we had filming your movie.
Yeah, I can imagine Stallone being on set thinking there's going to be 300 extras, and he comes in and there's one, and he is probably freaking out because this whole scene is ruined. Yeah. Everything I planned is just down the drain. How am I supposed to salvage this? What's going on? And I can just imagine all the stress and the anxiety he must have been going through. And it's funny how little things like that, little things that don't work out, can ultimately result in a much better scene.
Yep.
But one of the things I was mentioning earlier that I think is a really strong point of the film is sort of the commentary it has on masculinity and what men are supposed to be, because Rocky kind of always talks throughout the film. He's like, I always knew, the one thing I had was my body, and that's what I was supposed to use. I don't think too well. He always refers to himself, he's a dummy, or he's an idiot, or he doesn't think well, and he talks a lot about, and they don't go into this too deeply. It's just sort of like a recurring thing that they talk about, how he has a certain perception of who he is supposed to be, or that there are only two avenues for him. He can either he has his body and he can be a fighter, and that's all he's good for, or you have your brain, and which he perceives that he doesn't have that. And I just think it's sort of on the surface. You know, they don't really go into it too deeply, but you can just see through what Rocky says about himself, how he perceives himself, how he talks to other people, how he expresses himself to other people, or how he is unable to express himself to other people. Just these ideas of he has a very fine image or refined image of what a man is supposed to be or what a man can't be. Yep. And how he plays into that, or how he tries to break out of that. There are a few times throughout the film where I think at one point he says to Adrian, he was like, there was a certain thing that he said, that someone had said to him that he said didn't hurt him. And then later he admits to Adrian that it actually did hurt him. And I think part of that is, in the moment, he's a man. He's not supposed to be able to show that he's hurt by something. He's not supposed to be able to express his emotions. But then later, in confidence to Adrian, he's clearly trying to work on himself and be better. And he's saying, no, that thing actually did hurt me. With Mickey, they get into the argument, and Rocky's yelling at him, and then later he tracks him down and actually like, okay, let's have an actual conversation about this now that I've actually got my venting out. You see that sort of struggle to express himself throughout the film.
Yeah, and you also show that, like, he might just perceive himself as, like, some hard exterior man, but he also shows, like, he cares, just, like, for his love of animals. Like, he makes sure he feeds his turtles, Cuff and Link, all the time. He's always going to the pet store and playing with the... Like, he has a softer side to him that's revealed through the movie. And you can see that he generally loves Adrian, and he always was trying to just make her feel better, and when he goes in there and tells her jokes and stuff like that. Those are some of my favorite parts of the movie.
Exactly. And I think that's part of what makes the script as good as it is, and the character as good as it is, and all that is he has those layers to him. I think a lesser writer would have just fallen in the trap of, well, this is a boxing movie, and it's about a boxer, and he's got to be the most badass guy, and he's got to be the toughest man, he's got to be the alpha male, and all that, and you see those layers to Rocky in... Like you mentioned, I think that's one of the best parts of the movie is he has those softer moments. He cares about animals. He has that empathy, especially when he is supposed to be like breaking the guy's fingers.
Oh yeah, and he doesn't.
And he doesn't, and you could tell that he has more compassion. He has more empathy.
And he says like, if I break his thumb, he can't work. He can't get you the money. Like blah blah, blah
exactly.
Stuff like that.
Yeah.
So he proves that he does have a mind and that he can think.
Well, yeah, hopefully he has some capacity to think. But I think that is a great thing about this movie. Like I was saying, it would have been very easy to fall into that trap of he just has to be the exclusive alpha male, and showing affection towards animals is a weakness. Showing that he generally cares about Adrian is a weakness. But that's part of what makes Rocky as strong as he is, not just as a character written on a page or performed by an actor, but just as a human being. That's what makes him as strong and as good as he is.
Can I ask, so you haven't seen any of the other Rocky movies besides the Creed movies?
I've only seen Rocky and Creed.
Oh, you haven't even seen Creed 2 yet?
No.
I think you really should watch Rocky 2 at least, because it literally is like a direct... Like, you could honestly, if someone wanted to edit together, you could literally just put both of the movies together. Because it literally takes place right after the fight, and then it goes right into the next fight, pretty much. And it's probably... Of the Rocky movie, it's probably my second favorite. I haven't finished Rocky 3 yet. It was okay. Rocky 4, I honestly think is kind of just like a music video, to be honest. And Rocky 5, I've heard is horrible. And it's funny because Sylvester Stallone directed 2, 3, and 4, and then John G. Avildsen came back for 5, and everybody hated it. But I haven't seen it, but I do appreciate that they tried to do something different with Rocky, and it was more about, like, his brain was going and he couldn't be a fighter anymore, and Paulie had like gambled away all his money and he was pretty much like on the streets, and I find that interesting, but I guess it just didn't turn out. But then you get Rocky Balboa, which people seem to like, which was kind of a comeback, and then we've gotten Creed, which excellent. I think. Do you know that those turtles are still alive? Allegedly,
I read about that. Like as of like last year, Stallone said they're still doing well. Turtles live a long time.
Yeah,
that's crazy. Turtles are interesting animals.
Yeah, not the snapping ones though.
No. So I'd say, as we sort of bring this discussion to a close, this is our first movie of our month of boxing films. And so I'm curious, having seen this one, and as we go forward with the other movies in this month, what sorts of things are you looking for that you... Well, I mean, I think there's an obvious answer of movies that involve boxers or fights or anything, but what sorts of distinct qualities or consistent themes or ideas are you going to be looking for in the 4 movies that we're going to watch and discuss this month that qualify them as boxing movies?
Well, obviously there's boxing scenes in them, but I'd say out of the movies we're going to see, or well, some we've already seen, the movies we're going to watch, is they start with flawed characters who it seems like boxing is a way of them reflecting their emotions. Yeah. And it seems like they can let out a lot of their anger on, or just their hurt feelings on, what do you call it, in the ring. I was going to say the boxing field. That's not what it's called. But yeah, it seems like boxing just in general is a sport that you can really just lose your mind to, and it can really just, it kind of just takes over you. And I think that's a common through line between all these movies. It's just I think the best thing about these movies we're going to watch is, while there is good boxing scenes, the most interesting parts of them is the actual characters and their struggles. Yeah,
I agree. I think that's a very good point. A lot of these movies involve broken people. And I think a lot of good movies involve broken people, but I think these boxing movies especially, because when you look at movies and stories that involve the protagonists are involved in some sort of job that involve regular violence. Yeah. That always usually you don't find too many people who've got all their stuff figured out who are involved in regular violence. Generally there are people who have got some issues and are broken in some capacity and are trying to find a way to fill those holes that they have inside of them. And I think boxing's just one of those genres of films, probably a subset of sports movies, but it's a very interesting look at some broken people who have a lot of issues in their lives. And I think those themes of looking at broken characters who are trying to fill a void inside of them, themes of starting at the bottom and having to work your way up, these underdog stories, people who are trying to prove themselves. And I think we probably will see, in some capacity or another, looking further at toxic masculinity, the ideas
definitely in the next one.
Definitely. Looking at what does it mean to be male, or a dominant male, or an alpha male, which are extinct concepts, by the way. But I think a lot of these movies, just by nature of the boxing genre, and since a lot of these boxing movies, not all of them, as we'll see this month, but a lot of them deal with male characters in the ring themselves, I think that kind of lends itself to these questions of what does it mean to be a man, and the stereotypes that men can only express themselves through violence and through anger. And I think just the genre itself is set up in a way where they can best commentate on that. And I think that is something we're going to see a lot this month, and I'm very excited to get into that.
Me too.
So as we bring this discussion to a close, we'll just say our final thoughts on Rocky real quick. So Rob, what are your final thoughts on the movie?
Rocky, like I said, it's a movie that you can watch at any time, I think, and I think it's a great pump-up movie and get you excited about life and all sorts of things. And it's a good movie to watch when you're feeling down, that just because you're in a bad situation or a hard situation doesn't mean that you can't overcome it and achieve a dream of yours. And I love it. Yeah. And it's you should watch it if you haven't seen it. Like, I hadn't seen it before I seen Creed. But then I finally watched Rocky, and I really love it.
Well, if you haven't seen it, you shouldn't be listening to this because we spoiled the whole movie. But I'd say my final thoughts on the film are that it is a great movie in general. Not just a great boxing movie or a great sports movie, but a great movie in general. I think it's very well written. And I think one of its biggest strengths is the relational drama that it has, the character Rocky Balboa, and how we see his struggles and his challenges in trying to express himself, trying to rise above and be more than who he thinks he is destined to be, and how the challenges within the ring are parallel to his challenges in real life outside of the ring. And I think his dynamics with Mickey, his dynamics with Paulie and Adrian, and then, of course, Apollo at the end, I think all those just make for a really fascinating human drama. And then, of course, a lot of the details behind the movie in terms of the making of the film and its independent nature and the things that went right and the things that went wrong, and how all that sort of culminated in a movie that goes on to win Best Picture, be nominated for a slew of awards, be the highest grossing movie of 1976. I think it's just it has its place in cinematic history. And so it's interesting to go back and watch it and discuss it and review it and think about it in a retrospective term all these years later, and then also trying to put ourselves in the mindset of the people making it at the time. So I think Rocky is a great movie. I always love watching it whenever we do, and I think it's a really strong boxing movie.
Yep.
So that's going to do it for this installment of Movie Night Tonight and our discussion in 1976's Rocky. Once again, I'm your host, Nathanael Molnár. I'd like to thank Rob Giachinta for being here for this discussion. And the next film, we will be discussing the second movie in our month of boxing movies. We are talking about 1980's Raging Bull, directed by the one and only Martin Scorsese.
Hell yeah.
This is going to be a very interesting movie to talk about. Very interesting discussion. I am very much excited for it. And I think there will be some very interesting parallels to Rocky. And I think there will also be things about Raging Bull that are different in terms of the approach. I think it'll be interesting to look at now that we sort of have not necessarily a template, but an idea of structurally what a boxing movie can be with Rocky, to see how, with Martin Scorsese's approach to movies, how he deviates from that or how he falls into those conventions. So be sure, we will be back next week to talk about Raging Bull. Be sure to watch the film and then come join us for our discussion of the movie. You're not going to want to miss it. So thank you so much for listening to this. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more content. Be sure to follow us on all of our various social medias at Movie Paradise 99. You can check out Movie Night Tonight on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram at Movie Night TNT. That's Movie Night TNT. All of our episodes of the previous seasons and ongoing episodes are available on YouTube, on Spotify, and on Apple Podcasts. And be sure to tune in Saturdays at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time live on YouTube for the Movie Paradise Show, which is the two of us. We do a live show there where we talk about movie news, we talk about trailers, we talk about do brief reviews for movies in theaters, and we talk about a main topic and take live questions. So you'll want to tune into that, as well as our ongoing podcast series Film Thoughts, which just had its first episode debut earlier in the week with a season review of The Mandalorian. So you'll want to tune into that, which is also on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. So until our discussion of Raging Bull next week, thank you for listening.